Good morning. Thanks so much for showing up. We're looking at the week 15-16 slides under the week 15 module on Canvas. The agenda today is after you do attendance, I'm going to do a quick dialogue mini lesson, and then there will be a quizzes practice for you. And then finally, you'll continue your On the Rainy River creative writing for about a half an hour. So please dedicate about a half an hour to working on your creative writing piece after you do the dialogue mini lesson. So you have the same learning targets as last class, establishing a clear point of view and perspective to introduce and develop characters and their motivations, using narrative techniques of pacing, dialogue, and plot to convey a clear, distinct theme. One of those techniques is dialogue, which you'll learn today. And then finally, using precise words, phrases, including sensory imagery to create a vivid picture of settings, events, and characters, which we'll work on next class a little bit more. So on slide 4, I just have a definition of dialogue. Dialogue is included in narrative writing. If you read books, then you know and have seen dialogue. If you don't read books, you've seen it in the stories we read in class. So dialogue is a conversation between two or more people in a narrative work. So great dialogue should read like actual speech. However, you don't want to state obvious thoughts or small talk. So for example, you don't in your dialogue need to say, "Hi, Tim." "Oh, hey, Elroy." Those things are kind of implied, and dialogue should instead set the scene and provide information, advance action, develop characterization, and be brief and impactful. Okay. And to the right, if you want to read it, I just have a quote from Marriage Story, which is a Netflix movie that came out last year. I'll just leave that for you to read, though. Okay, so there's 4 rules that I'm going to be talking about for dialogue today. The first rule is to use quotation marks at the beginning and end of a direct quotation. When I say direct quotation, I'm saying something that your character says explicitly. So if you have a quote from your character, then you would add a quote at the beginning of the direct quotation and then a quote at the end. So that's signaling to your reader, this is something that specific character said. Hopefully that's obvious to all of you, but I need to make sure I say it. Any punctuation goes inside of the quotations, and I'll come back to that rule when I go through the other rules. The second rule is to add and vary dialogue tags. A dialogue tag reveals who is speaking and how they are speaking. So again, you have this quote, "You really shouldn't have done that," and then at the end is the dialogue tag. The dialogue tag can come at the end, at the beginning, or in the middle. At this case, it's at the end, so it says, "He whispered," so that reveals who is saying it, in this case, he, and how they're saying it, whispered. So you want to vary the dialogue tag so you're not always saying said. Since the dialogue tag is considered part of the sentence, if it comes at the end, as it does in this example, you're going to separate it from the dialogue or the direct quotation with a comma. Okay, so in this first slide, it was just a period because we had no dialogue tag. If the dialogue tag comes at the end, however, you can't have 2 periods, so you need to change that to a comma here, add the dialogue tag, and put the period at the end. So you're just moving that period after the dialogue tag. On slide 7, I have a second example. In this case, the dialogue tag comes at the beginning. So you have "her students pleaded." So the subject is "her students," and then pleaded is how they said it. So instead of said, again, pleaded. When the dialogue tag comes before the direct quotation, you put a comma before the quotation. So you see that in red here. And then you start the dialogue. Teach us more about dialogue tags. You still need to capitalize the first letter of the dialogue because that's considered its own idea. So again, a little confusing because the last one you made it lowercase here, the dialogue tag, but in this case it comes at the beginning of the sentence, so you capitalize the dialogue tag and then also the first letter of the dialogue. An advanced rule for adding and varying dialogue tags is if you have a complete sentence, so in this case it says "teach us more about dialogue tags" or "we will leave this Zoom meeting." That is one full complete sentence. You can put the dialogue tag in the middle of your direct quotation. If you choose to do that, and the dialogue tag here is in blue, "her students demanded," you would put the comma before the dialogue tag and then after the dialogue tag as well before you pick up the sentence. Okay? And then here are some tags other than said that you can use: acknowledged, admitted, demanded, muttered, screamed, warned, whimpered. Lots of different options for you on slide 9. For rule 3 in dialogue, you want to begin a new paragraph each time the speaker changes and use a separate set of quotation marks. My example is Mrs. Rozon saying, "Do you want to stay during academic advisement? Ask Mrs. Rozon." In purple is Sean answering, and I know that the speaker has changed because the writer has hit enter here, started a new line, and indented. So by starting a new paragraph, it signals to the reader someone new is speaking. Also, in this case, I have the name. Sean answered, "I would love to. I can't get enough of English." And Mrs. Rozon responds, "I knew it." Notice in that last line, there is no dialogue tag. It's not needed there because by beginning a new paragraph and indenting, the author has indicated to the reader that the speaker changed and Mrs. Rozon is now speaking again. Okay, so that's why you do it. So if there's no dialogue tag, then the reader knows who's speaking without having to explicitly say it. All right, and your final rule is to punctuate a speaker's words with a comma, question mark, or exclamation point inside the quotation. So can we just leave for break already? Again, you have the full direct quotation of what Sue said. That's indicated by the quotation marks, and you'll notice the question mark, because it's a question, is inside the quotes. You'll notice on this example, the next sentence is a full sentence. Sue turned off her camera. Because this is a full sentence, it is not considered a dialogue tag, so you do need to capitalize that first sentence. Also, it's a name, so that helps clue you in. And then Sue is continuing her comment, and I know that because there's no indent, so I know it's still Sue speaking. And she says, "I can't wait to get off Zoom." And then Mrs. Gosgin responds in purple, "I'll never let you leave." And she's bellowing, so it's an exclamation point. So you notice you have the exclamation point here instead of a comma, because when an exclamation point or a question mark is needed, then you add them to show how the person is saying that. And then you put the period at the end. All right, so "I'll never let you leave." She's exclaiming, so you add the exclamation point. Bellowed Mrs. Gosgin. You have your dialogue tag and then the period. And then finally, Josh says, "I wish my computer would just die." And he's just kind of melancholy and sad. So we have the comma there because you don't have an exclamation point or a question mark, and you can't have two periods. So we move that period to the end. All right, finally on slide 12, it just gives you a link. If you like these pictures that you see here, I got them from this source. So if you want other useful tips, hints, visuals, you can go to that link. They might help you. I tried to give the most amount of information in the shortest amount of time as I possibly could. And again, just a reminder, your punctuation goes inside the quotations. Your direct quotations are dialogue. Dialogue tags that come at the end are not capitalized. They have to be lowercase. All right, and finally, you are going to complete the dialogue quiz on Quizzes. I haven't used this for this class yet. However, you should just be able to go right to the link. And you enter your name. Please make sure you enter your name. That way I know who you are and who completed this. You click start. There are 10 questions. You should be able to get through it pretty quickly. I would think no more than 5-10 minutes. If you do this, I will give you extra credit on your narrative writing assignment because you showed up to class today, even though I'm not here, and I really appreciate that. And that'll demonstrate to me if you understand what the heck I just said in this recording. Thanks so much.